Hello, welcome in. Thanks for joining me. We are going to talk about the new 2026 Farm and Ranch contract. TREC has done it again. They've had a meeting and they have decided to change all of our documents. And now we are required to learn about them and use them as of July 1st, 2026. The documents that we have currently and the one that we're going to go over right now, they were actually out for voluntary use starting June 15th of 2026. But before everything starts to get a little hot and heavy, we want to make sure that we actually know what we're doing because it's June 26th as of me making this video today, and July 1st is like next week. So let's talk about it. When you are deciding which one of the promulgated contracts you need to use, you need to figure out what the current use of the property is. The only time farm and ranch really comes into question is if there is actually a visible farm animals, farm equipment on a property, and or if you're dealing with acreage. The problem with acreage is you could also use the commercial unimproved contract that's with Texas Realtors, or you could use the promulgated contract with TREC for the unimproved property. And again, trying to determine which one of those contracts you use, it all comes down to what is currently the use of that property. If that land is currently used as something with pertaining to farm and ranch, then you have to use a farm and ranch contract. Even if your client is purchasing that land for residential use or for commercial use, it's irrelevant. What is the current use of the contract? I'm sorry, what is the current use of the property that determines which contract you're going to use? So, again, since we're focusing on farm and ranch, let me share my screen with you. I'm going to go through the entire contract, what you're looking for, how you fill it out, what some of these paragraphs mean, and how they are different from more than anything, the unimproved property contract, so you can see when you would use one over the other. Now, the way you know that you're using the correct contract is you would see the date here at the top. Okay, so May 4th is when TREC has decided to move forward with the changes in this contract. So this is the most updated version. This is how you know it's right there at the top. Any date past May 4th means that there's a new contract, which probably means there's another video. Okay, but anything before May 4th, we are not supposed to use it anymore because we now have this one. Okay. The parties of your contract, none of this has changed. Who is your buyer? Who is your seller? The property description is typical. You're looking for your legal description. Notice, unlike the 1 to 4 family contract, the condominium contract, the unimproved property contract, or the new home complete or incomplete contracts, there is no lot and block here. There typically isn't with farm and ranch because you're dealing with so much acreage. You're really just dealing with the county, what the actual address is or what it's known as, and the legal description. Now, the crazy part is you can see how many lines that they have because it's described as follows, and this area, this second line, all of this is really for, and even this third line here, it's all really for the legal description. Okay, this one right here. Sorry about that. And then down here, this is going to be the 123 Easy Street paragraph, this one right here. That's where you're going to put the actual address. But these 3 lines are really for the legal description because it can be that long when you are dealing with a farm and ranch contract. The next thing you're going to notice are the improvements and accessories. Notice we're not necessarily talking about things like um, in the 1 to 4 family contract, they really focus on things like you can see them here, like the ceiling fans, mirrors, carpets, things like that. What we really want to talk about in our residential improvements and accessories are all of the farm accessories. Okay, because up here you have your residential improvements, but down here you have your farm and ranch accessories. So when you have things like game feeders, actual livestock, um, submersible pumps, fuel tanks, irrigation equipment, corals, gates, chutes, pressure tanks. They give you a list here. When you're dealing with that type of transaction, that's going to be your biggest key that we're dealing with the farm and ranch. Outside of the fact that if there's an actual farm there, or if you see the livestock animals there, then okay, that also gives you an indication that you're using farm and ranch. But these additional farm and ranch accessories gives you the biggest red flag. Stop using the unimproved property contract and move on to farm and ranch. It really doesn't have anything to do with the amount of acreage. Again, what is the current use of that property? Your residential accessories are also still here, but again, just notice that they also added in a full section for farm and ranch accessories and they separated that from the residential accessories. You can have a farm and ranch with an actual residence on it. That's totally normal. But again, if you have all these accessories, now you know what contract to use. If there are actual crops on the property, again, just knowing that there would be something in writing for that because that seller gets to retain their rights to harvest until the delivery of the possession of that property, things like that. So again, though, these are your indications that we are probably dealing with a farm and ranch. Your sales price paragraph is the same as it always has been. A plus B equals C. Okay, A plus B equals C. Your cash amount plus your loan amount equals your sales price. So your cash amount here, that's going to be the down payment, or if your client is paying full cash, then that goes there. And then your loan amount is in the second box. If that's going to be an assumption, seller financing, or a third party, you're going to put the loan amount here. And then those two numbers together should equal the offer price that your client wants to purchase at. So if we're dealing with 100,000 and your client is putting down 20,000, 20,000 goes in this first box. 80,000 would be the loan. 20 plus 80 is 100,000. A plus B equals C. Now, while you're dealing with this price, 3D, what this one is talking about, very similar to the exact same as what you're dealing with the unimproved property contract, is the price determined by the acreage? So if you've ever seen a sign that said plus or minus 20 acres, that is a very professional way of somebody saying, I think I have 20 acres, but I'm not quite sure that I have 20 acres. So I either have more or less 20 acres, right about that amount. So when the survey actually comes in, what if it's 19 acres? Is the price going to be adjusted based on the survey? Or what if it's not 20 acres anymore, it's 22 acres? Is the price going to be adjusted based on that survey? You're answering yes or no here. And if it is going to be adjusted, at what price per acre are you adjusting it to? That's what goes in this box right here. So if I were paying $1 per acre and there's 20 acres, that would mean I'm paying $20 for the 20 acres. Well, what if I did the survey and I said that it will be adjusted and it's 22 acres? I need to change, I need to make sure that this says that we will be changing based on the survey and I'm paying $1 per acre. So now instead of $20 for 22 acres, my contract states that I'm going to pay $22 for those 22 acres, and vice versa. If it's 19 or 18 acres, I will get to pay less. If I do not want that price to be adjusted, I could have 20 acres in my contract, but it could come out to be 30 acres, and I'm going to pay the same price. Okay. Now down here, this is talking about if there's an adjustment of more than 10%, either party can terminate. So that example that I just gave, what if I thought it was 20 acres, but it comes back to be 50 acres? Nobody is expecting the seller to sell 50 acres at a $20, 20 acre price. Nobody's expecting that. So the seller or the buyer can terminate as long as it's being adjusted by more than 10%. Okay. Now, in your leases paragraph, this is talking about current leases. So when you put an offer on that property, was there a residential lease on that property? Was somebody renting the residential residence on the farm and ranch land? Is there a fixture lease currently on that property? That could be propane tanks, solar panels, the alarm system, a ring doorbell, whatever type of fixture lease that's currently there. It's irrelevant if any of these leases will be gone by the time that of closing, because the addenda for all of these will explain that. But the surface question that we are answering is when you put in the offer, is there a natural lease? Is there a fixture lease? Is there a natural lease? Is there a surface lease? If there is, provide the documentation, provide the addenda that goes with, and then explain in the addenda, yes, it will terminate at closing. No, it won't. Here are the terms of the lease. This is how much everybody's making. Here are the security deposits. Here is the copy of the lease. Here's all the documentation that you might need if there are any of these four leases on the property when you send in the offer. Okay, again, it matters not if that lease will be terminated by the time of closing. We still need to discuss the matters of the lease while we're under contract. Okay. Your earnest and option money, this paragraph has not changed. Where is the earnest money getting delivered to? At what address? At what amount? And then how much option money? And how long do you want for the option period? None of that has changed with all of our contracts. It's all the same. Same thing with paragraph 6 with the title policy. Who's paying for that title policy and what title company is it coming from? Just a thought right here, where it's talking about will or will not be amended, we're specifically talking about a survey here. So if you ever come across, this is in any of our contracts, if you ever come across a situation where there's no survey, then it's automatically will not be amended. Because if there's a survey, that's the only way something would be amended in the title policy. If there's no survey, then there's no need to amend, so it would not be amended. But again, if there is a survey, and you want your shortages read, buyer, seller would have to pay for that. But if there is no survey being provided down below in this paragraph or not required, then it's going to be not amended. Okay. Your title commitment is the same. The title company gets 20 days from the time that they receive the contract to get the title commitment out. Survey is the same. The seller will provide a survey in a T-47. The buyer will pay for one, or the seller will pay for one. Your objections are the exact same. The exception documents, this is something different. This is not in any of the other contracts. When you have an exception, what this is saying is prior to execution of the contract, the seller has provided the buyer with copies of the exception documents. So exception documents could be anything like drainage easements, access easements, any type of easement would be a great example. If there are any oil and gas mineral rights, reservations, anything like that, that documentation has been provided prior to the execution of the contract. The seller has provided this information. So now, when the buyer decides to put in an objection period or exceptions to title, we can say, no, no, no. You do not have an exception to title because you were given these exception documents prior to execution and you reviewed them, and we've already given you reference of all of these documents. Okay, so that's what this is for. With farm and ranch, this is very normal because people are leasing their land, surface rights, crops, things like that, livestock, things like that. So you want to make sure that the other party has all of those documents prior to, so that they cannot now use that as a way out of the contract or as an objection to title or to an objection of the contract at all. Okay. Your surface leases, again, you're going to add that as an exception as well. And then your title notices, something being in or not in an an agricultural development district. We need to know that if there's an ag exemption or anything like that. Your property condition, all of this stuff is the exact same. Seller's disclosure notice, have you given me notice? When will you give me notice, or notice is not required? We talk about lead-based paint, taking something as is or as is pending. I'm moving a little fast now. And all of the completion of these repairs, lender required repairs, the government matters, all of that, the exact same. Just like the unimproved property contract, the seller also has a disclosure of the land itself. If there is a primary residence on this farm and ranch land, you could also still attach the seller's disclosure notice for the residents on that property. But if this is strictly farm and ranch land, there are no residences, then we need to still disclose about the land. Is it in a flood zone? Is it in a floodplain? All of the things. So the seller is going to fill this out here. Again, all of this is the exact same except for the government programs. Sometimes you have farm and ranch land that are part of government programs. If they are, you're going to list that here, or just NA if that's not applicable. The water rights, surface rights, groundwater rights, this is a new addition to all of our contracts in Texas. Though we have our options here as well, and attach the addendum so that we can answer those questions or that notice correctly, okay? The rest of the contract is the exact same. When are we taking possession? When are we closing? Is anybody related in the contract? Is the seller providing concessions? How much is the seller paying towards the buyer's agent's compensation? And the new thing that we have in writing here, how much is the buyer paying towards the seller's compensation? All of that stuff is here. Prorated taxes, rollback taxes. This is not in all the contracts, because when you're dealing with a lot of land, there could be rollback taxes because you're getting a tax break on the farm and ranch and things like that. So you want to make sure all of that is discussed as well while you're looking around for your clients. The casualty at loss default, all of these other paragraphs, the exact same. Nothing has changed here. Your notices, please just make sure that you have all the contact information for your buyer, seller, and the agents. This is where the title company is going immediately because they need to send the welcome packets to that buyer and that seller. There's information she said both parties need to fill out. There is wire instructions, earnest and option money instructions the title company needs to get to the buyer. We need to make sure that the seller is receiving all the emails and the receipts. So sometimes agents will just ignore all of this and not put their client's information here. And then the title company has no idea who to send stuff to. And now they're asking you for this information. Just put it in the offer. It's no big deal. They did change up how the agreement of the parties are listed. They're helping everybody out by labeling the type of addenda and sectioning it off to make it very, very, very neat and clean here. So if you have a financial addendum that needs to be added, we listed them all here. Same thing with the leases, any type of additional test reports. And if there's anything extra, we still have the other box right here that could be listed. We just separated it here so that it was very easy to read and find the addendum that you are looking for. The attorney box is all the same, which attorneys are included. The execution page is all the same. This is also a little bit different. We want to know who the brokers are, and we want to have it written out very clearly here. Okay, so if there's an intermediary, we want to see who's representing who. If their appointments are not listed all here, if it's a buyer and a seller agent, list everything here versus it just being those two boxes like it used to be prior to this contract. And then down here, it's just information added as far as compensation goes. Okay, it's just more information here about compensation. And then your receipt of contract, it's all the same as the other contracts are. So hopefully that helps. Remember, the main thing with Farm and Ranch is going to be what is the current use of the property. That will determine if you're using this contract or not. I hope that helps.